All right, me. It is the early afternoon, and I've just finished reading S.E. Hinton's The Outsiders. Um, I mean, it's obviously a good book, right? It's one of the kind of young adults. I wouldn't even say young adults, kind of like burgeoning teenager uh, books. Um, I read this, I think, in seventh grade. Maybe was the last time I read this. Um, I think published in 1967. I think one was. S.E. Hinton was 17 at the time of writing this initially, which is really, really impressive. Um, but because of that, there are certainly some issues, right? Um, boy, are our characters very misogynistic throughout all of this, um, which is a struggle, right? Um, beyond that, looking at just the characters themselves, right? I guess I say looking at the themes actually presented here, right? Definitely the biggest thing that's kind of consistently going on is this class warfare aspect um, of the Outsiders, and this difference between, I assume it's supposed to be the Socs. I always read it as the Socs, um, and then the Greasers, right? There's this huge monetary gap that is never going to be filled, right? That's one of the big things that's kind of constantly going on here. Even if the Greasers win these fights and win these rumbles, right, against the Socs and those of the wealthier nature, it doesn't really matter, right? As described by a couple different people throughout the book, because all that's ever going to happen is they do this, and then everything goes back to normal, right? The Socs or the Socs, whether they win or lose, they get to retreat back to their homes, retreat back to being wealthy and having things, and just forget it ever happened, right? Then I think the next important thing to look at would be this relationship with Derry, or Daryl, as that Ponyboy has, as well as Soda Pop has with Derry, right? And also that Derry kind of has with himself, right? Derry is in this very unique position of, not being all that much older than everyone else, right? At the end, it's stated that he's 20 years old, and so he's only 2 or 3 years older than Soda, and then only 6 years older than Ponyboy, and he's in charge, right? And even when it comes to, as Ponyboy describes, the social aspect and the social structure of the Greasers, Derry's the one in control, right? Derry's the one in power unofficially, and so he's kind of got all this weight on him, right? Is that he's the leader of this social group, right? That he doesn't really identify with in a lot of ways, but also he's forced to be in charge of his two younger brothers, because that's also described. Derry really should be part of this social elite group, right? If he's as powerful as they say he is, right? And all these other things that they say about Derry, well, really he should be part of this social elite group, but he can't be, right? Because he gave all of that up to continue to take care of his younger brothers, right? And so it's a difficult situation for anyone to be in, right? Much less a 20-year-old that has just given up really his own opportunities in life to hopefully make things better for other people, right? And then finally, the last two people talk about would be the differences between what's his face, Johnny and Dallas, um, because they both end up dying very tragic deaths, right? But you know, there's a difference in the way that they come to these tragic deaths, right? One of them, in Johnny, right, has spent his entire life being told that he is useless and worthless and does not matter, right? And he couldn't take it, right? That's the way that his family treated him. You know, even as part of the Greasers, right? He was the pet of the Greasers, right? And so even though he was collectively a part of them, right? He wasn't a member of the Greasers, right? He just belonged to the Greasers. And so when Johnny kills Bob, in the defense of Ponyboy and whatnot, it really gets to him, right? Because now, in this act of violence, he has succumbed to the very thing that he has been told all of his life that he is, right? This worthless piece of nothingness that is prone to violence and prone to destruction, right? And so when he goes in there to save the children from the fire, right, he's in effect attempting to redeem what's left of himself, right? And eventually succumbing to the injuries that he sustained during the saving of the boys, right? He has been allowed to die as a hero, right? Even though his entire life up to that point of the 16 years has been nothing but fear and destruction and uselessness, right? In this last week of life, right, he's finally allowed to mean something to someone in a very distinctive and important way, right? Versus Dallas. Dallas has gone through and lived the same sort of thing, right? Of where he's been told all of his life that he's useless, that he's worthless, that no one will ever care about him, and he's embraced that, right? Ponyboy constantly describes him as being this hard-skinned person, right? But Dallas has just simply embraced this feeling, right? It's the very edgy. I think when I wrote when I was 13 or 14, the very edgy, you know, someone has to wear the black hat sort of deal. And so, you know, he gets this, and he takes it and he runs with it, right? And what eventually blows him over the edge, right, is that when the fire saving happens, right, and Johnny's made out to look like a great guy, Ponyboy's made to look like a great guy, and then even Dallas is made to look out like a great person, right, because he saves the saviors, right? He's the one that pulls Johnny out from the fire, and he stops the fire from spreading on Ponyboy, and he gets written about, and he's viewed as this hero. And really what I would argue is that the reason that Dallas effectively blows up at the end, right, is not because it's his only way to get out any fear or frustration or anything like that, but it's because he has now just experienced for the first time in his life someone is being proud of him in some way, or enjoying the fact that he even exists in some way. And now that Johnny is gone, right, the person who effectively caused all of this, right, he doesn't know how to handle himself, right? And so to get back into the only way that he could feel comfortable, but also the only way that he's ever been treated and remembered, is to effectively is to rob, flash a gun, and get shot, right? Because in his mind, that's all he's ever been worth, right? So we have these two very distinctive kids, right, that have gone through and done the same, had the same issue, right? And then when they finally get praise and for existing and doing the right thing, right, they act in radically different ways because of what they're looking for in their life at this point. Um, but yeah, parts of the book are weird, right? The pacing is a little weird. Um, but yeah, I mean that's The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton.